As if it wasn't enough that you've got to paint an entire army every single time you want to play as a different faction in Warhammer, you also have to consider the basing for all of these models, which takes up a massive amount of time. Today we're going to be looking at how to use paints to paint rocks in a way that is going to speed up your production massively. We're using Mechanica Standard Grey, Dawnstone, and Administratum Grey. But, you can do this with any selection of colors. This is just what I'm going to be using for my rocks. So I'm starting with Mechanica Standard. This is the darkest of our 3 grays. And all these bits of cork that I've put on the base and that are going to be our rocks, I'm just completely coating them in Mechanica Standard. I'm putting it on pretty thick. I'm not really watering it down. It's coming straight out the pot. But basically, we get the entire thing covered in our darkest tone of grey. And we immediately get out our midtone, which is Dawnstone for me. So again, straight out the pot, we're not watering this down. I am going to start to do the chunkiest highlight you've ever seen. So typically we're kind of taught to go with this base color and then do some shading if we want to, do a chunky highlight and a thin highlight. What we're doing here is wet blending. So the idea is we take our midtone, the Dawnstone, straight out the pot, we put it onto the edges kind of roughly, and then we just use our brush to kind of stipple and feather it in. So we get a nice blend of the 2 colors. Obviously, every time I want to go back into the new pot, I'm going to wash off my brush so I don't cross-contaminate the colors. And it's literally just a case of building up the Dawnstone that we've got and feathering it back into the Mechanica Standard that's already on the rock. I tend to do this process twice, once to feather the color into the previous color, and once to kind of establish a very chunky, loose highlight around the edge. And then finally, we're moving on to Administratum Grey. This is our lightest tone of grey, and I'm just repeating the process. So straight out the pot, very chunky. I'm just kind of dropping it around the edges just to get the paint on there initially, and then it's time to feather it into the rock. Now with this one, because this is quite a strong contrast to the darker tone that we already have, I'm being a bit more careful. So the first pass, again, we're feathering this into the stone so that we get a transition, but also we get a bit of texture. And then here, the second time, you can see that I'm doing much more traditional highlights, I suppose. This is still very chunky, and I still am going to feather this into the existing color a little bit, but I'm taking more time to make sure that we are catching those kind of raised corners and the points and the bits protruding from the edges of the rock. This draws the eye to those sharp corners and those edges and just gives it a little bit more definition. Now, you might think that this is quite an intimidating process if it's not something you've done, but honestly, just give it a go. Give it a go. It is incredibly easy. It's really satisfying. It's very intuitive. Just kind of find your feet with it. Apply as many layers as you feel like you need to, and just keep feathering in those brighter tones. And just take your time. You will very quickly get used to this process. Lastly, I'm just taking some of my midtone that I've used on the sand, really watered down, and just kind of pushing it in just to get a bit of pigment on the rock from the kind of sand. I really want to try out some actual basing pigment at some point soon, so I think I will be picking some of that up to try it out on my base as an experiment with. But just to give you a better idea of what a more finished base was going to look like, I wanted to just do something for this example just to really kind of show you what you can achieve in a very short space of time. here is our finished result. I think in future, when I'm doing this, I'm going to make sure to have rougher textures on the rocks. I feel like the effect has worked far better on the smaller ones, where there's more texture, there's more detail to kind of pick up, and you can see the shadows a lot more clearly. The big flat rocks in the middle, it looks good, but I definitely feel like you get more out of this effect on the smaller stones. I'd say that if you're trying to push yourself to really get better at painting and enter painting competitions, etc., you probably want to use other techniques and take a lot more time with this. But for me, this is such a great way of saving time during the basing process when I'm army painting. I want to say thank you so much for watching. Feel free to join the Discord, linked in the description below. And if you're looking to pick up new basing materials, why not head over to Element Games, who offer discounts across most of the things they have in store. You can use my affiliate link in the description below to get me a little bit of commission at no extra cost to you. Thank you again so much for watching. Have a great week. I'll see you next time.